Hi, 1 and 2-year-old leaders. We're preparing for September 15th in our series called Back to Basics. Last week, we talked about the prophet Elijah and how God had sent Elijah to try to help tell the people who were worshiping other gods that he is the one true God. He went and lived with a widow and her son, and God provided for them in a time where there was a drought and which caused famine in the land. Our story today picks up in the book of 1 Kings chapter 18 and 19, where we look at Elijah again, and he is told to go to King Ahab. Now remember, King Ahab was a bad king. He had many false gods, and one of those gods was called Baal. And according to Ahab, Baal was bigger and badder than Elijah's God. And so God told Elijah to go to Ahab and challenge him against his gods. And so Elijah went to Ahab and said, I want you to meet me at Mount Carmel. And while we're at Mount Carmel, we will see who is the one true God. The one true God will show himself with fire. So Ahab and the prophets met Elijah on Mount Carmel. They built their altar, put a bull on their altar, and the prophets of Baal and the people danced and sang, and Scripture even says they looked very silly in how they were trying to express to their God that they needed him to show up. And then Elijah had the people help him set up a altar, and where they were going to do the exact same thing, except for looking silly part. All he was going to have to do is talk to God, and then see which one of these altars was burned up by fire. So Elijah and the people built an altar, they dug a trench around it, they slaughtered a bull, they put the bull on top of it, and then he went one step further. He told the people to cover it in water. And we all know when there is wet wood or wet anything, it's much harder for a fire to start. And so everything was drenched with water in a drought time. So obviously this was a big ordeal. And so Elijah says to God that and so they go back and forth a little bit, honestly. Baal's worshipers, Elijah was like, well, sing louder, do more. And they were having to do all these crazy things to show that their God could possibly be the true God. Then Elijah prayed and he said, Lord, answer me so that these people will know that you, Lord, are God. And God sent a fire from the sky. It didn't come from underneath, it came from the sky to show that it was from him. That he sent the fire from the sky. It burned up the bull, the wood that the bull was laying on, the stones that were underneath the altar, and all of the dust in the area. That was a hot fire, which we all know is very hard to get with everything so wet. Had to be God, not Baal. And all the people over here trying to talk to Baal and get him to show up, they're still dancing and singing and looking silly. And all the people over here see God already has shown himself to the people in a very short amount of time. And so obviously Ahab was not happy about this. He tells his wife Jezebel. Jezebel gets super mad. And apparently women in the Bible, in this part of the Bible at least, when they get mad, they get even. And so Elijah fled into the wilderness And God continued, though, while Elijah was away from King Ahab's kingdom, then he continued to encourage him and to tell him to not give up. I think there's so many things that we can all learn from this story. Our bottom line this week is the wisest thing I can do is cry out to God. And I know there have been so many times where I was so sure that I needed to do something within me that I forgot to cry out to God, that I forgot to make that my first response. And so I think this story helps all of us see that the God, the true God, the one true God, that all we have to do is cry out to him and he'll respond. And he has a big, big plan for each one of us, that his son Jesus was a part of that plan, and because Jesus was a part of the plan, we get to be sons and daughters of an amazing king who we don't have to do anything to prove to him that he is God. He is God without us having to do anything to prove it to him. In fact, we know this because he sent his son Jesus. He loved us so much that while we were still sinning, he made a way for God, for Jesus to come into the world as a man God and live a perfect life, die on the cross, so that we could have and raise to show us his man godness, so that we could have relationship with him. So lots of fun stuff in your lesson today. I think you're going to have a fun time talking about the fire and how God provided the fire to show the people who he was. Your small group activity today might be a little challenging for your littlest ones. So if you want to get one of your teen helpers to build these for the kids, that might be the best way to actually get it done. You have a cup, and then you have a bag full of crepe paper that are red and orange and yellow. And what you're going to do is make your altar, essentially. An altar doesn't actually look like this, but this is what we can give little ones that make it easy to do. And on this example, I just took a few sheets of crepe paper and taped them to the inside of the cup. You could go all the way around if you wanted to. It's supposed to show that it's the fire. Or you could do just like I did and just do a little bit that looks like turkey feathers. And then you'll put the kid's name on the bottom of the cup or on the cup somehow so that we make sure we get them all home to the right person. And then one of these stickers goes on there so that families will know what we've been talking about. But, there is one God who knows everything. That's been our big picture question. God knows, what does God know? God knows everything about the past, present, and future. And then it also has our memory verse. So you can send those home with the kiddos and remind them of how God showed himself in the fire to Ahab and the people in Ahab's kingdom. You have your memory verse, and your memory verse is James 1:5. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. James 1:5. And I love this scripture as a reminder to me that it's not up to me, that if when I go to God because I don't know something or I need to know something, and if I remember to do that instead of leaning on my own understanding, then he gives to me generously without looking at my faults, because Jesus has already covered that. You can pray with your kiddos and then send them home with their families when their families are ready to pick them up. Thank you so much for taking care of our littles. It's been so fun to watch some of our kids grow up. I know my girls have been serving in children's ministry since they were 7 and 8 years old, I think. And it's been so fun for them to see their babies that they had as 1-year-olds are 5th graders now, and ready to to see what God has in store for them. So what you are doing is setting kids up to believe in a big God who hopefully they will go to for the rest of their lives. Yes, thank you for serving. I was going to pray, but you can pray with your group and then send them home. I'll talk to you later.